had just a short time ago. We will make America powerful again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America healthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. Great again. Great again.
Hey everybody, welcome to the American Tribune Live. Welcome back. It has been a wild April over here, flying down to Florida, flying down to Arizona. We're going to be in Tennessee at the end of the week for one of the American Tribune's business partners' weddings. So lots of flight in April. Who knew that April was a busy travel month? But it's good to have you back. It's good to be back in studio here. And what a wild time to return. You're watching the Democrat Civil War unravel here. I mean, make no mistake. I hate to just kind of end the program before it even gets started here. Democrats will rally around whoever they decide. If it's a civil war over who should be president, who should be in charge of the DNC, what candidates run at the local level, whatever happens, whatever plays out in the media, just understand that your brainwashed, normie, NPC, boosted, masked up, propagandized, brainwashed Dem voter out there that might otherwise be a good person. They might go to work, pay their mortgage, coach their kids' t-ball. No matter what happens here in the media, whatever happens in the political landscape, these morons will vote blue no matter who. So there you go, folks. So everything else we cover today, it doesn't really matter because these idiots out there will always vote Democrat. The argument about should we be more like a Bill Clinton? Should we be more of the Boomer style? And James Carville will represent the Boomer Democrats. And David Hogg has much said so. So we're going to dive into the David Hogg, James Carville debates here. And Hogg represents the deluded communist Gen Z, just wrong about everything, but so arrogant and so self-assured that they think they are right about everything. We're going to watch all this play out. But like I said, TLDR, they will have voters vote for whoever they run at the end of the day. If they nominate AOC in 2028, which honestly, if the primaries were today, I think AOC is the nominee for the Democrat Party. If it's more of a Gavin Newsom, who, again, they have the same policies. These people, like I always say, are interchangeable for the most part. Now, I think the David Hogg communist Democrats are a little bit more overt in how much they will just tell you how much they hate this country, but their policies are ultimately, at the end of the day, quite similar. It does not matter who they run. People will vote for them because they see a D, and they know that Donald Trump is mean. He's scary. J.D. Vance, well, he was Donald Trump's vice president, so he's equally mean and scary. But we got to dive into this. We got to talk about the Dem Civil War. Before we do, I just wanted to play this clip as well. This one came out last night. This was on Tim Pool's show. You had an independent journalist. Her name is, I'm going to forget her name here, I think Tara Palmieri. She's been on the news cycle for years. 4 years. She was around when Donald Trump first said that I'm not talking about neo-Nazis and fine people. I totally disavow them. Guess what, folks? You have a journalist, no shocker here. You probably have Democrat friends and family and neighbors and church congregate members that have no idea that Donald Trump never said he called neo-Nazis and white supremacists fine people. I was blown away, not because I'm shocked that people still believe this, but just how discouraging it is that half this country honestly believes all the hoaxes. One of the first shows I ever kicked off this podcast with, 2.5 hours long. My voice was hoarse at the end of it. We debunked not even all of them because there's too many to cover in even 2.5 hours. We debunked so many Trump hoaxes, and it's so easy to do. All you got to do is use the interwebs and you say, okay, this is the clip the media played. Let me go find the full clip that they didn't edit out. And sure enough, here we have the full story. Turns out Donald Trump didn't call them fine people. Turns out he didn't want Liz Cheney assassinated. Turns out he didn't say there'd be political violence in the streets, a bloodbath, as it were, if he lost the election. Turns out he didn't collude with Russia. Turns out he didn't kill the koi fish in Japan. My favorite story because it is so stupid. One of the earliest hoaxes they had of Trump. But let's listen to this clip. I just had to play it for you all because this is the mindset of half this nation still. They honestly believe all of the media hoaxes. No amount of debunking, no amount of programs like this, and so many others out there, they're not going to realize the truth because they want to live in their echo chamber, in their bubble. I'm going to play this short clip, and then, folks, we'll get to the headline of the show here as we talk about the Dem Civil War that's unfurling right in front of us.
People, which he did not.
He said there were good people on both sides.
He said, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis or the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally.
Is that the full quote?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
You didn't know that.
I mean, I have to look back on it.
Wait, now can you pull up the video of it just so, you know, because we were wrong about the HEATS stuff.
Simply stunning stuff, folks. What are we in? 2025. The Fine People hoax, I believe, was 2017. 8 years ago. We all know the real story, except clowns like this. They will go to the ballot box. They'll vote Democrat because I can't vote for someone that called neo-Nazis and white supremacists fine people. And the reaction in the room is priceless. Like, they didn't even know what to say. Honestly, what do you say to these people anymore? But this is one of my lead-offs. If someone wants to talk politics to me, if I want to figure out if they're arguing in good faith, if they're even worth having a conversation with, and I love a political conversation with anybody, but I want to know, like, are we doing this for fun? Am I just going to try to push your buttons and rile you up because I know you're so brainwashed and stupid? Or are you actually trying to learn and form real opinions? I will ask someone, did Donald Trump call neo-Nazis and white supremacists fine people? And their answer will pretty much tell me what direction the rest of the conversation is going to go. Am I just poking your buttons and eventually you're going to curse at me and walk away? Or are you going to be like, I learned something today? Now, these people will still vote Democrat because even though this is a hoax, they're not going to ask the larger question of like, what else did the media lie to me about? If they're willing to lie about this, and I can debunk it in less than 30 seconds because here's the full clip, they're not going to ask the question, I wonder if they lied about other things about Donald Trump. They're going to say, no, they got it wrong here. They were just incorrect. All the other stuff is true, though. All the other stuff about Donald Trump is true. Pretty amazing segment right there. We're still living with these people. These people still vote. They still drive their cars on the road. They're still raising kids. They still have an influence on your life, and they think Donald Trump called neo-Nazis and white supremacists fine people. So that's where we're at with that crowd. But let's dive into the civil war within the Democrat Party. Branded as a civil war. And honestly, folks, this could, like I said, I'm going to cut to the chase. They're still going to vote Democrat. Your normie Dem voters out there, they're not paying attention to this. They think Donald Trump called neo-Nazis fine people. Do you think they're paying attention to James Carville and David Hogg? Absolutely not. They just know in 2026 in the midterms, they've got to get Democrats back into control of the House. And in 2028, they got to put AOC or Gavin Newsom or Jasmine Crockett, whoever they run in 2028. Doesn't matter who, doesn't matter what kind of fighting happened behind the scenes or in your face right here in corporate media, they will vote Democrat no matter what. So that is my jaded, cynical, I think accurate observation, though. It doesn't matter what happens right now. I hate to say that because now you're just like, well, why am I paying attention to this conflict? Because I have thoughts on this conflict. Number one, I got to say this, and we make the point on my other podcast, Freedom from the Press. Jason Robertson, another business partner of the American Tribune, and I host every Friday, 10 a.m. Central on our other Rumble channel, our big Rumble channel, the American Tribune. You're watching on the smaller channel, the American Tribune Live with Todd Peterson. Just wanted to keep it clean, keep my podcast in one place, keep our other stuff in the other place. Donald Trump woke up the Republican base. I don't have to say this to you, but I gotta lay the groundwork here for this a little bit. In 2016, Donald Trump just shattered the GOP, the old guard of the Republican Party. Rhinos, they're all sellouts. They never did anything for you. I can't think of a single thing Republicans ever did in my lifetime prior to Donald Trump winning the nomination and then ultimately winning the presidency. But for the last 8 years, we've been figuring this out. And ultimately, I think America First is here to stay. They wanted to get rid of him in 2020, which they did. Rhinos helped steal the election in 2020. They helped all these narratives play out in the media, all the things that you were supposed to believe about Donald Trump. The Rhinos were right there with it because as it turns out, thanks to Doge, we now know with certainty that they hated him changing up the bureaucracy, the establishment. They didn't want anything to change. They wanted to go as the losing candidates. The Mitch McConnells of the world, they love to lose elections because they can campaign on that and say, vote for us and we'll go do this. We'll go fundraise some money. We're not going to do anything differently, but we'll fundraise because we're fighting Barack Obama or we're fighting Hillary Clinton or we're fighting Joe Biden. So they love to lose. That was the entire premise of the GOP. And when they got in power, they did exactly what Democrats did for the most part. Democrats and Republicans prior to Donald Trump were one and the same. Were Democrats a little more extreme in some of their policies? Yes. But did your life ever get better under Republican? Absolutely not. So Donald Trump changed it up. He fought for 8 long years, and I think it's safe to say now that America First is here to stay. The regular conservative Republican voter out there, I do not identify as a Republican. We'll use the Republican word, though, in this case. I will vote Republican if there's an America First candidate. That's not changing. That's not going away. Enough people are now anti-war, small government, secure border. This is the America First agenda. That was not the Republican agenda of old. So we're not going back to the Mitch McConnells and the Paul Ryans and the Kevin McCarthys. We're done with that. We have woken up for the better because we woke up to the grift, abuse, corruption, fraud, laundering, all the things that took place in the federal government. We're not going back to that. The difference with this infighting here with the Democrats is that they're not going to have that awakening, it looks like. Democrats are still fighting, do we want to be deluded communists or do we want to be really deluded communists? We needed them to have a Donald Trump moment. The only thing that's going to save America is if regular Democrat voters who I will name call all day because you deserve it. If you vote Democrat, you deserve to be mocked and ridiculed. You're voting Democrat, for crying out loud. The only reason they're not going to change the Democrat Party, I think that's safe to say now. They just need to come into the MAGA tent. And I've been saying for a long time now, the MAGA tent is big enough for everybody. I want you in the America First tent. I want you to make America great again with me. I want you to want your life to be better. It's not happening in the Democrat Party. It's happening over here. America First is the direction we need to head. And so if you used to vote Democrat, come on over here. Vote for Donald Trump. Vote for JD Vance. Vote for other America First candidates. We will gladly welcome you here, and I will stop name calling you if you make the right decision. I already saved you from yourself. You're welcome, by the way. I voted for Donald Trump in the America First agenda. I got complaints on that. We're not deporting enough people fast enough. We don't have enough peace fast enough. I don't know why we haven't signed a peace deal already in Ukraine. That's dragging along here. Our border is still not secure. 95% drop in border crossings. Incredible. That number should be 0 border crossings moving forward here. We still have boys undressing in the girls' restrooms in some states, and Trump's saying you're not going to get federal money. Fine. But that needs to come to an end. So there's more that Donald Trump could do. Don't get me wrong about that. But it is far, far better than what Kamala Harris and Democrats would have done. They would have had an increase in border crossings. You would have had more rapes, assaults, crimes, murders against American citizens at the hands of violent illegals that do not belong here. So that's what you're voting for right now as a Democrat. So you got to come over to our side, because what your party is fighting about, let's get into the title of the show here, folks. What your party is now fighting about is, do we want to be somewhat deluded communists, or do we want to be really deluded communists? And that is it. That is the moment happening in the Democrat Party. It is not an earth-shattering seismic shift between a Donald Trump and Republican old guard. It is simply, do we want the Boomer Democrat vision to stay in power, or do we want the Gen Z, just progressive, tyrannical, trans-focused Democrat Party to take power? So they're arguing over here. They're arguing in the left. They're not arguing back in the center. They're certainly not arguing back in the America First corner. They're both arguing from an America Last position. None of this is about Americans, by the way. This is simply about who gets to control the levers of power in politics. That's all this is. Who gets to be in charge in the left of center, left-wing Democrat Party? None of this has any bearing on you. None of this is making your life better, but that's what they're going to fight about. So I think it is now safe to say, put a pin in it, we're not going to have a Democrat reawakening. The Democrat Party, this is their religion. They're not going to say Americans don't want this. It's actually not good for Americans. They're not having that moment. They need to just leave the Democrat Party. You, my Democrat voting family members and friends, you just need to leave the Democrat Party. You are either arguing for what we already got with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, or making it worse than what we got with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That is where your party is fighting right now. Do we go even more tyrannical, insane? Nope. You can't be part of that conversation. You just need to leave altogether, walk away from the Democrat Party, and come into the America First tent. That's all you can do. But I'm here for it. I'm here for it. The left will always eat its own. Nobody is safe. These people are crabs in a barrel trying to crawl up on top. It is about them and themselves only. So we've got James Carville representing the old guard of the Democrat Party. I do think David Hogg gets some points in there. He goes after Carville, saying, for my entire life, I've never seen you win an election, which I think that's fairly true. I mean, Carville was influential in the Clinton administration. What has he done since then? He ran Kerry's campaign. I don't think he was involved with Obama. I think he ran Clinton's campaign. He did get Joe Biden installed as president, and he did get a DEI vice president. So I guess he had some hand in that. But that's the vision Carville wants. Like I said, it's already bad enough. But David Hogg says, no, it's not enough. We need to radicalize more people. We need to trans more kids. We need to castrate more kids, chemically and physically. We need to remove more kids from their homes, just like Tim Walz will do in my home state of Minnesota. Colorado Democrats just passed a similar bill. If you don't affirm your kid, the state will remove them, and they're going to celebrate that. All Democrat voters are going to celebrate that as they watch some kid marched out of their home because their parents didn't play along with this trans insanity. They want more open borders. Joe Biden didn't let in enough illegals. David Hogg says, no, we need more illegals in this country, apparently. Again, it's all a power grab. These people do not care about you. They don't care about truth or reality, because if they did, they wouldn't be a Democrat in the first place. But let us dive into this incredible infighting here. In no particular order, I think we got to start with Carville kind of laying the case here. Carville is actually going to take the position that we need to be fighting harder. He supports Senator Chris Van Hollen. I think I saw Maxwell Frost in there. A couple other deluded Democrats are down in El Salvador trying to get Kilmar Abrego Garcia back. The Maryland man, as they would have you believe. It turns out he is the wife-beating MS-13 gangbanger. That's who they're championing. And listen to Carville lay out this case. And then ask yourself, Can it get more extreme? And the answer is yes, because David Hogg says we need to replace people like James Carville. So let's set this up where they're already insane, and then David Hogg's going to take it a step further.
People say, well, should we really fight on this turf, or should we fight more on ordinary people? And this we should fight on. You can't pivot to an economic hit. So wait a minute. This is why we think we're a country. And if they do this to him, it's an old saying. First they came for whatever, and then whatever, and then they came for me. You know what? You know why you remember that saying? Because there's wisdom in it. There's real wisdom in it. And history has taught us that. And first they came for him, and then we're going to say no right there. We got to keep fighting this. I think this is worthy of being on the top agenda of things that we're going to fight over, is get this guy back.
All right, so that's an insane moment. Again, David Hogg says that's not radical enough. The Democrat Party needs to become more radical than James Carville, arguing for the return of an MS-13 gangbanger. And I've said before, too, that is all just a cherry on top. That is an instant deportation to the great prison system in El Salvador. The fact that he's an illegal immigrant is enough for me. If you are an illegal immigrant, I don't care if you're the nicest person in the world, you're not an American, so you don't get to be here. Send them all back. But no, they're going a step further and saying, we're going to actually make the hill to die on this one. We're going to advocate for a wife-beating gangbanger of MS-13, who Donald Trump rightfully called savages and animals when he was president the first time around. But Carville here, again, not the point of the video. Notice how he said it's not about economics. Remember, this is the guy that said it's the economy, stupid. That was his whole shtick. The only reason we're listening to James Carville is because 30 or 40 years ago, he said it's the economy, stupid. And then 92, Bill Clinton beats George Bush after he lied about raising taxes. But now suddenly, no, it's not the economy, stupid, which we all voted for Donald Trump to secure the border and fix the economy. Now Carville says, I'm going to take the complete opposite approach. It just shows how much their brains have been melted. It's not the economy, stupid, is what Carville is now saying. And because we elected Donald Trump on the border, he wants to make the case that we should bring back these violent, illegal gang members because, as he so eloquently said, first they came for them, and and it's a poem we've all memorized because it's so powerful and wise. And it's like, did we remember it, James Carville? Are you aware that they came for the socialists and the trade unionists and the Jews, and there was no one to speak up for because I didn't speak up for them? I mean, he doesn't remember any of it, and he wants us to be like, yeah, it's a powerful poem, and we all remember it. So James Carville clearly losing his step. They're absolutely insane. He ran on the economy in the 1990s. That's why Bill Clinton won the elections, because they focused on the economy. And now he says, don't worry about the economy. I think we're going to be the champions of violent, illegal gang members. That is the winning ticket. And again, we're going to get to David Hogg in a second. David Hogg says, hold my beer. We can get more radical than this. It is, I'm running out of words, folks. Retarded, insane, deluded, I've used a couple times. I am out of words to describe these Democrat strategists, whatever that means. And then I'm really out of words for Democrat voters. You're voting for this? You think this sounds like a good idea? But we're not done. I got one more Carville clip for you. He's going to, again, defend this position. Before I do, though, I just got to point out, if you're watching the video live or you're watching the video recording, Carville is a very wealthy man. I was very disappointed in his liquor cabinet. He had like the bottom tier scotches and bourbons. I saw a Johnny Walker Black in there. I saw like a $40 scotch bottle in the corner. What is he doing? Like, are you trying to impress me with your liquor selection? And I'm over here thinking like, I'm no James Carville. I don't live in a multi-million-dollar home. I haven't amassed a huge fortune just grifting off the American public as some political strategist over the years. Very disappointed in his liquor selection, by the way. But let's listen to Carville. He's talking to Chris Cuomo, who, I got to be honest, I will never forgive Chris Cuomo. He just straight up lied to you about COVID. Remember, he was like the first news anchor to get COVID, and he had that wonders coming out of the basement. I'm better. I survived COVID. So he lied to you about that. He lied to you everything about Donald Trump. He sounds quite reasonable in this clip here. Chris Cuomo leaving CNN did wonders for Chris Cuomo himself. He can actually be honest because he sounds like a reasonable person. And again, it kind of proves the point. He probably was a reasonable person, but he was just lying because they were cashing the checks over at CNN. But here's Carville, here's Cuomo. He's, again, defending the MS-13 position. Yes, this is who Democrats are going to champion for.
Here's my one issue about the constitutional issue that surrounds the Garcia case, argue even the IAEA case, the invasion case, is politically, if you want to argue due process, that's high ground. But it does look, with Van Hollen running down El Salvador, like you guys are pleading the case of a gangbanger. and trying to bring them back into this country. And you're going to lose politically to the effort to get bad guys out of the country.
First of all, there is no evidence that has ever been presented. Okay, there's no due process. There's no anything. That's a great. Every court has said bring him back. So what do we do? Say, well, we want to pivot to another issue. Let's just leave him down in some Alsovian dump. Let the president of the United States, who, by the way, in his oath of office, is to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, of which the Supreme Court, I think is Article 3, but don't hold me to it.
It is
just blatantly disregarding an order. So if we pivot to another issue, if we take care of the middle class, if we don't have laws in this country, what good have we done?
All right, I got to stop right there. I'm done with Carville. I'm over it. Folks, I can't take the lies anymore. Number one, again, I just said he's been in politics for 40-something years, and he doesn't know Article 3. This guy is clearly, he doesn't remember the poem that's so important to remember. He doesn't remember what part of the Constitution is so important to defend. Donald Trump's violating the Constitution. I don't know what part, but I'm sure it's in there somewhere. That's what the Democrat argument is. Actually, it's a great example of how all Democrats, and I probably shouldn't have said he's losing a step. This is how Democrats think and feel. They get mad about something. They say it's related to the Constitution. And when you ask them, well, what part of the Constitution is Donald Trump violating? He says, I don't know. Maybe it's Article 3. Absolute clown show over here. But Carville, once again, defending this. And he says, well, we have to uphold the Constitution. Didn't you know that Donald Trump took an oath to defend the Constitution? And I searched the records, folks. I did a deep dive on the internet. I went through X. X has a great library of videos. I never found any clips of James Carville speaking out on behalf of January 6th defendants. I never heard any comments from Carville when Joe Biden got rebuffed by the Supreme Court over student loans. And he said, no matter. I'll just find a workaround from that. I'll just come up with a new angle to forgive all these student loans. Democrats do not care about the Constitution until they can create a narrative against their political opponents. That is it. That is the entire Democrat priority system. That's how they view the Constitution. We hate it. We hate this country. It was built by white slave owners. It's a racist country from the very beginning. We have a racist Constitution, and we hate it. We're going to tear it apart in front of your face. And then when Donald Trump does something that the American people voted for, and we wanted, and he's not doing enough of it, by the way. I want more deportations. Violent, illegal, I want them gone. I want them all gone if they're not American citizens. But Carville says, oh man, it's so bad that Donald Trump is not listening to the Supreme Court. This is the first time. It won't be the last time. Actually, it isn't even the first time. Every single time something happens that they don't like, they're going to say, but the Constitution. And then as soon as they get in power, do you think they're going to uphold the Constitution? Carville, I believe, is a big supporter of destroying the Second Amendment. So much for the Constitution. But that's what they do. They hate it until they can use it and create some narratives against their political opponents. Folks, I don't know why this is hard to see. Do you have friends and family members that listen to this garbage? I'm so worried about the Constitution. I'm so worried about Donald Trump being authoritarian. What's that you say? Joe Biden was kicked out in a coup by the DNC and they installed Kamala Harris, who did not win a single primary vote. They ran a presidential candidate just this last year who did not receive a single primary vote. They kicked out her boss. They installed her, but they're worried about defending democracy and the Constitution. Again, it's wild stuff. I'm running out of words to describe Democrats and especially to describe Democrat voters out here. You guys apparently like this. But we got to get into now the debate between Carville, let me clear out the library here, and David Hogg. David Hogg, of course, came to fame during the tragedy at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas here. I'm missing my three words here. The school shooting back in 2017, I think it was, as well. It's amazing how all this stuff happens under Donald Trump, by the way. And since then, because he, by my understanding, was a coward, and I don't even know if he was there, is what I think happened. But because he's involved in a school shooting, that makes him important to listen to on all matters political. So now, for the last 8 years, he's been grifting off a tragedy. We only know him because he was obnoxious and loud from the very beginning. Some might say a political plant. But he now thinks he has a better vision for Democrats. And the vision is not how do we win elections. The vision is how do we make America even worse than how James Carville wants it. Again, James Carville supported Biden and Kamala Harris. We've already gone through that list of how awful their presidencies were and would have been in the case of Harris. David Hogg says, I'm not going to learn from the election. I understand most Americans want a secure border. I even look at polls and it seems that half of the Democrat base out there is fine with Trump's deportations. Turns out most Americans don't support the trans agenda. Most Americans don't want to be involved in Ukraine. Most Americans want criminals locked up so they can't terrorize good people on the streets. Most Americans don't actually support the Democrat positions on anything. They don't want to be able to murder a baby inches from exiting the mother's birth canal. But David Hogg wants all of that. And like I said at the beginning, the tragedy is even though Democrats don't want any of this, they're still going to vote Democrat because they're so brainwashed. And I led with the clip of this gal not even knowing that the Fine People hoax was a hoax. That's where they're at this point. They believe all of the lies. They have been conditioned, and it is a conditioning. Whenever you hear the word Donald Trump, MAGA, America first, they get an owie in their tummy. They have a visceral reaction. They go, ooh, Donald Trump. So they're going to vote Democrat, even though they don't agree with any of the policies of Democrats, even though they're benefiting from Donald Trump's policies. Here is David Hogg. I'm going to start with this clip here because I think it's a Carville calling him a contemptible little twerp, which, again, I got to give credit to Carville. David Hogg is absolutely a contemptible little twerp. And David Hogg actually has his own good comeback too, like I said, where he said, Carville, you've never really won an election. But I think I just fact-checked that because he did support Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
He's being paid to run against other Democrats. I think it's an outrage. I don't know if I have standing, but I might give the DNC $10 and sue him. He's a contemptible little twerp, if you ask me.
The well-known Democratic strategist James Carville said in response to this announcement of this plan that you have to primary Democrats, he said that the DNC should sue you and called you, quote, a contemptible little twerp. What is your reaction to that?
Try it. That is my reaction. I would also say James Carville has not won an election since before I was born. I think it's time to have new leaders in our party that are ready to meet this moment, because a lot of the people that are most critical of this plan are the same ones that had $2 billion to win an election and still lost. So I think the experts can save it because it's time for some new ideas.
And again, I got to make this point here. The new ideas David Hogg wants to implement are the opposite of what the American people actually want. You have to understand that this is a religion for them. Just as much as you and I believed on Sunday that Jesus rose from the dead on Easter, why we commemorate it, these people believe in the trans agenda, in the open border agenda, in the destruction of America as a country. That is their agenda. That's their religion. That is what they believe, as much as you and I believe that Christ rose from the dead on the third day. That's where we're at, folks. He's not looking at the outcomes of the election. He's not saying, gosh, James Carville, you supported a candidate that talked about price controls. You supported a candidate that basically wanted to send young men and women over to fight in Ukraine for some needless war just to enrich your buddies in the military-industrial complex and all your lobbyists and your special interest folks and line the pockets of politicians. You've always been soft on crime because you believe in restorative justice. So you can have a hardened, violent criminal released hundreds of times in New York City, as we've seen, as reported on at the American Tribune, terrorize good Americans in this country here. You want to raise taxes on hardworking Americans just to punish them for their hard work and success. David Hogg's not looking at the outcome of the election saying, boy, Americans wanted to go in a different direction. It turns out Americans don't want communism. They don't want gay communism, race-based Marxism. They want a secure border. They want a working economy. They want jobs in this country. That's it. They want their kids left alone. They don't want them to be indoctrinated in the government school system. That's all we want. We have very few asses in this country. Leave me alone. Government, get out of the way. Let me live my life. That is all we want. David Hogg isn't looking at the outcome of the election, though. He's saying, no. James Carville apparently didn't push the envelope enough. James Carville laid this case out for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Bill Clinton back in the day. No, I'm David Hogg. I'm smarter than everybody. I am smug and arrogant and unlikable, and I've never been punched in the face, which he strongly needs to wake him up a little bit. He wants to do more. And the only conclusion you can reach without him spelling it out, besides we need someone to rise to the moment or rise to the occasion, they speak in these empty platitudes, this trite pablum. He wants more communism. He wants more gay race-based communism. That's it. He wants more illegals. He wants more foreign wars. He wants more trans people in front of your kids. He wants more kids trans. He wants more criminals back on the street. That's the only conclusion one is able to reach. He wants to steal more of your money. He wants to give more of your money to illegals, more of your money to these NGOs to get out the Democrat vote, to enrich politicians and lobbyists and donors and friends of these political elites. What is David Hogg's actual vision? Well, you're never going to hear him say it because they can't say it out loud. David Hogg might be a moron, but he's not that dumb. He can't, or he hasn't come out and said it yet at least. Yes, I want a wide open border because I hate this country. I want good American communities to be destroyed demographically, culturally, with more crime. I want to legalize marijuana everywhere. And even though that was a libertarian position, we've seen how that works. No, David Hogg wants dispensaries in every community. He wants homeless bums on every street. He wants your air smelling like pot. The vision David Hogg has for America is one of disaster. No, I can't believe I have to say this. No one's ever benefited from communism except for the elites. Now, David Hogg might be positioning himself to be an elite. He is the DNC vice chair somehow. And again, Minnesota's claim to fame is that we always get these morons in high positions. Tim Walz for vice president. Ken Martin, not a household name. He comes from Minnesota. He led the Minnesota DFL, and now he is the DNC chair. Folks, all I got to say is come visit Minnesota, live here for a while, see how corrupt and inept it is, and then realize that's the vision they have for the rest of the country. They want to make it California, Illinois, Minnesota, New York. They want to just make life miserable for everybody because I think they get off on your complaints. They get off on your misery. David Hogg is not concerned about regular Americans like you and me, whether you vote for Republicans or Democrats or don't even vote. He simply does not care about you. David Hogg gets off on watching you be miserable and by climbing the ladder of power here. He is what, 20? Is he in his mid-20s, late 20s? He's never accomplished anything in his life. He's on a trajectory to never accomplish anything in his life, but he's done quite well for himself, simply repeating these more and more insane talking points here. All right, we've got Francis hopping in the chat here. Francis, thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. Carville is wrong. Hogg is a smug little twerp. Yeah, I mean, they're both wrong about everything. Honestly, to be a Democrat, by definition, you are simply wrong. They have not laid out, they can argue with one another, but they're not arguing over rightness and wrongness. They're just arguing about who is more or less wrong. If you are a Democrat, you simply can't defend your positions based on reasoning or morality. Yeah, Hogg is an asshole. He is an asshole. Fally, thanks for tuning in as well. And folks, I just want to celebrate the fact that Fally got her Rumble working again. Fally, thanks for tuning in today on Tuesday. Looking forward to seeing you on. We do have a recording, Francis and Fally, for our podcast on Friday because we are going to be in Tennessee for our business partner, Will, Tariff Will, as you might have known him if you caught that podcast here. So we will be releasing a pre-recorded podcast. Actually, Jason and I are going to record it this afternoon here. Carville is also a tool. They're all tools. That's basically my summation of every Democrat here. Again, wrong about everything, smug about everything. And we got Wrong Think in the chat as well. Carville's wife, who was a campaign chair for Bush, called him Serpent Head. And I love that connection there because, yes, there is the swamp right there. Carville for Clinton, Carville's wife for Bush, one and the same. All right, we got to get through the comments here, folks. Thanks for commenting. Thanks for watching. Send Hogg to El Salvador. I think that's the best idea I've heard all day. Yes, let us send him to El Salvador. Let him campaign to release this violent, illegal, wife-beating gang member. But that's who they're championing, folks. I don't know if we need to make this any more clear. They would rather advocate for a violent, illegal criminal. Not once did these people speak out about the treatment of J6 prisoners. They were in jail cells for years. 4 years. Not one of them visited those jail cells or got in front of a camera and said, I think these people need due process. You know, that person that was on the lawn of the Capitol building that day, and then the FBI raided his home, and they had guns drawn, and they took him away in handcuffs right in front of his wife and kids, and then he just sat in a jail cell and didn't give it a pre-detention trial for like a year. I don't remember any of them talking about due process. Maybe he should be free and sent home. They didn't do it. And honestly, the irony about this, when they're like, he needs to come home, it's like, no. This Abrego Garcia monster is home. He's an El Salvador national. We sent him home. We did exactly what you guys wanted here. You have no idea how much it pissed me off not to get on Rumble. I believe you, Fally. We enjoy Rumble very much. That's why I stream live from the Rumble studio. We want to support Rumble as much as possible here. And we can say things like this. We can say that David Hogg is wrong. We can say that Carville is wrong. If we say that over on our Facebook pages, the lefty overlords, the big tech overlords of Facebook would say, no. Carville and Hogg have the only correct position. And now we just unpublish your page here. Yes, and as Fally says, it shows how much they hate this country. They hate this country. They hate you. They do not care about you whatsoever. And I keep trying to tell my Democrat family members and friends and my neighbors that will listen, even if you vote Democrat, they don't care. You can vote for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, whoever you vote for in 2028. Like I said, if the primaries were today, I think AOC actually gets the nomination. She's been leading in the polls. She's got tons of momentum. She's doing all these town halls and rallies and speeches, and it's April of 2025. She is simply gearing up the machine, starting to fundraise here. Even if you vote for AOC, your life isn't going to get better. She doesn't care about you. She despises you. She looks down on you. Even though she's some low IQ bartender, she still knows in her heart that she's better than you. So you could be out there with the best of intentions, wrong as they are. I'm going to vote for Democrat and make everyone's life better. You will make the lives of illegals better, the lives of criminals better, the lives of corrupt politicians and bureaucrats better. The one life you're not going to make better, though, is yourself. You folks need to stop voting for Democrats. All right, we got to get into a little bit more of David Hogg, though, because I don't hate myself enough, apparently. I don't hate you all enough here. So we're going to listen to more David Hogg. Here he is expounding on his vision for the future of the Democrat Party.
The well-known Democratic strategist James Carville said in response to this announcement of this plan that you have to primary Democrats, he said that the DNC should sue you and called you, quote, a contemptible little twerp. What is your reaction to that?
Try it. That is my reaction. I would also say James Carville has not won an election since before I was born. I think it's time to have new leaders in our party that are ready to meet this moment, because a lot of the people that are most critical of this plan are the same ones that had $2 billion to win an election and still lost. So I think the experts can save it, because it's time for some new ideas.
All right, I got to focus on the money aspect of this now as well. So we played out the rest of that clip. It was abbreviated in the previous one here. David Hogg's approach to this is that we spent $2 billion, and by we, I mean the Democrat Party, that somehow raised, folks, I mean, now that we're digging into Act Blue and Democrat donations here, somehow raised $2 billion for Kamala Harris after she was announced at the last minute. Nobody liked her as vice president. Nobody wanted her in 2020. And I'm supposed to believe that all these grandmas over there were writing $10 checks to her campaign, and she raised billions of dollars at the last second again. So no, that didn't happen. That was all corrupt fundraising, by the way. But he said all that money lost the election. He thinks they need to spend more money on apparently more deluded communist Democrats. That's his solution. We aren't extreme enough. Kamala Harris was apparently too moderate because none of David Hogg's positions skew to the center. He says, no, we need more trans kids. We need more foreign wars. We need more illegals in this country collecting your welfare and Social Security money. We need to spend more of the country's, or we need to print rather more money and send this country into greater and greater debt. David Hogg doesn't realize, again, he is clueless, he's blinded. We didn't elect Kamala Harris, not for lack of trying on the part of the establishment and the media, not for lack of spending, but because we completely rejected the Democrats' vision for America. That's it. They could have spent $100 billion, and they might have gotten a few more votes out of it, because then you can pay off more people to change the votes or drop more absentee ballots in the boxes, stuff more boxes. But the American people themselves, in a free and fair election, no matter how much money Democrats spent, no matter how much Kamala Harris campaigned on communism, we rejected that. We don't want that in America. And David Hogg is sitting over there thinking like, yeah, she raised $2 billion and lost the election. It's a little bit deeper than that, David. The analysis needs to go a little bit deeper than the money spent. So David Hogg's vision is, I'm going to raise $200 million. This is what David Hogg said in a separate video. I couldn't find the clip for you guys on the show today. He wants to raise $200 million to primary fellow Democrats to get more radical and then, of course, younger candidates. David Hogg hates the older class. He hates the old guard of the Democrat Party. His vision for the Democrat Party is younger and more tyrannical. That's it. That's his vision. And he thinks, well, the American people rejected Kamala Harris. I know what's going to work. Let's get more radical people, worse than Kamala Harris, more racist, more trans, more everything. That'll be the ticket. That's what Americans are going to vote for. It's just simply that Kamala Harris didn't spend enough money on radical issues. I'm going to spend more money on more radical issues. That'll do it. How much money is David Hogg getting paid? Because I don't even want to help Democrats at this point. I will take that paycheck, and if I will run their campaign, and I will say, here you go, DNC. Here you go, Democrat candidates. Do you want to win these elections? Here's what you're going to run on. America first. That's right. You're going to run as a Democrat, and you're going to run an America first agenda and say, I was wrong. I support everything Donald Trump is doing. And in fact, I want Donald Trump to do more of everything. I want more walls. I want more deportations. I want more peace around the world. I want lower prices. You know what? Turns out I support the America First movement. That's what David Hogg should do if he wanted to win elections. But he doesn't. He wants to go further left, go right into communism. He just wants to do all of it. And he thinks that's the winning play. But like I said, it actually might work, because everyone you know that votes Democrat, they're going to keep voting Democrat. They don't even care about the policies anymore. They never talk about the policies. If you listen to the media right now, or you listen to the media during the campaign cycle, it's never about necessarily what Democrats are running on. They're just fear-mongering over what their opponents are running on. So they're going to lie about whatever Republicans are doing. Donald Trump's going to do this. He's going to be an authoritarian. He's going to grow a mustache. That's what they focus on. They don't actually say, like, turns out, folks, we're going to just let everybody in that wants to come in. We're going to give them as much welfare and Social Security as possible. We are going to send your sons and daughters overseas to Ukraine, because that's a fight worth having. If we can't defend democracy in Ukraine, then what's the point of even having democracy around the world? So that's where Democrats are at. And like I said, all this infighting, I love it, because the left will always eat their own. When I worked in the government school system, I kid you not, I sat in meetings every single day, every day. That's where your tax dollars are going, by the way, when you pay property taxes. It's so your administrators in the school system can just sit in meetings. And it might start off with saying, you know what, maybe we should stop suspending black kids because that does them a disservice. If black kids are suspended, then they can't sit in the classroom and learn. So that's the theory, that they're going to learn just by sitting in the classroom. And then someone says that's not enough. You know what we should do? We should actually encourage them to stay in the classroom after getting in a fight. So not only will we not suspend, I think you're a racist for saying they need to sit in the principal's office for the rest of the day. You're excluding them from their education. So I'm going to be the one to propose the idea that we put them right back in the classroom after fighting. And then someone over here says, well, what about punching a teacher? Because that happened where I worked in Brooklyn Center. I had a second grader punch out a teacher right in the eye. She got a black eye. And our solution was he needs to go back in the classroom. And you know what? We're going to blame the teacher for that because she wasn't understanding of his home life, of his background, of his needs. And so now she, as the teacher with a black eye, had to hug the kid and say, I'm sorry for not meeting your needs. And all you do is you go around in this stupid circle jerk of how can I get even more dumb ideas out here? I'm going to be even dumber than the last person. And that's how these people get off as well. They say, oh, you think you're woke? Well, let me be even more woke. Absolutely insane. So that's what you're seeing with Hogg and Carville right here. Carville was already bad, but then what Democrats do is they say, I'm going to take that bad idea and I'm going to make it worse, but now it's my idea, and I get to be proud about that. All right, I got to hop back in the chat here for a second here because we got Fally chiming in here. Please let them put her in the running. She's a fool, a parrot, I think referencing AOC. Absolutely. I've seen some interesting takes on AOC, by the way. Yes, AOC is dumb. She has horrible ideas. And I made this point too about Biden, so I'll make it about AOC. I honestly don't care how dumb or smart they are. Like, you could have a high IQ, a low IQ. You could be brain dead like Joe Biden. You could be just actually retarded like AOC. The intellect aside, I think we make a mistake when we focus on their intellect. They're already a Democrat. I know they're dumb. I know they have bad ideas. When we say Biden's mentally declining, when we say AOC is dumb as a bag of rocks, I think we do a disservice because we need to focus on their policies. If AOC is president, she will destroy the country forever. Joe Biden was president and tried to ruin the country forever here. Had he been sharp as a tack like the Joe Biden of the 1990s, it would have been just as bad. So that is always my point too. Yeah, she's dumb. Yeah, Biden was falling apart mentally. But at the end of the day, it's their policies that they implement that matter. So you can be smart, dumb, doesn't matter. I hate your policies. So we really need to focus on what AOC would bring to the table here. And again, all you got to do is say, like, are you serious? A bartender is going to be president? They were telling me Donald Trump wasn't qualified to be president, running the largest business in the world, basically, had the popular TV show. Oh, he's just an entertainer. He's not qualified. Yeah, but AOC is qualified. If that bitch got in, we'd already be screwed. Yeah, AOC as president is a truly frightening prospect here. And again, it's more for her policies. It's more for how she feels about you and me as Americans, how she feels about this country. That would be no good. That would absolutely be no good. All right, I think I have one more video clip. This is David Hogg defending himself again. And then we'll finish up with Jesse Waters making a great analogy here. Let me hide Fally's comment. All right, we got David Hogg one more time sitting down on CNN because why not? He has better ideas than James Carville.
Let's talk about what you did this week, raising a lot of eyebrows here in Washington, D.C.
Just a few.
You announced this week you're the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, but you're raising $20 million to boost primary challengers running in safe Democratic seats against incumbent Democrats. Yes, safe
Thank you
seats.
for the clarification.
Yeah, it's causing a lot of stir. We asked James Carville about it the other day. We couldn't get you. We couldn't book you that day for whatever reason.
Well, rest assured, he's my biggest fan.
Well, so here's James.
All right, I can't do it anymore. David Hogg is so smug. Notice how he always had to interject in there and say, yeah, just a few. Yeah, he's my biggest fan. Like, I just hate that. I hate that about, and I see it more in Gen Z. I see it more in younger kids. These people that have never lived, have never been an adult for longer than 2 seconds. They think they know everything. And that's one of the things that grates me the most, even setting aside politics, because you get younger people of all political persuasions that act this way. I was that way, I'm sure, as a kid. If you're an older audience member watching right now, maybe you were that way as a kid. Maybe that's just a thing you go through. But now that I'm on the other side, now that I've got my own kids, now that I'm a little bit older and wiser and humble, you just look at that and you're just like, gosh, that is so grating and obnoxious. Like, stop, David Hogg. Nobody cares. The fact that anyone takes David Hogg seriously is a crime. If you think David Hogg is a serious person, maybe that's one of my requirements for voting. Like, check a box, yes or no. Is David Hogg a serious person? And if you check yes, you have just been disqualified from voting. That's how bad it is there. But David Hogg, there it is, $200 million to primary safe seats. I love this so much. I love the fighting that's happening here. It will be fun to watch these primaries play out. In Minnesota, where I live in a 70-30 Trump district, so it won't happen in my backyard. And thankfully, by the way, I don't want to live in a 70-30 blue district. It's bad enough that Tim Walz is our governor. But he's going to try to unseat these popular Democrats simply because he thinks he knows better. And doesn't this sum up David Hogg so well? Yes, these politicians have figured out the formula. We lie to our people enough. We run against Trump stuff. We say this or that. And we get elected as Democrats because we live in a white, affluent neighborhood. And we just run on white guilt all day long. These rich people, they can absorb their taxes. These rich people, they'll never have to deal with illegals. So I'm just going to run on their emotions. I'm going to say, hey, white folks, you should be guilty about being rich and white. And even though none of these policies will affect you directly, you should vote to ruin the rest of your neighbors' lives. And so they figured out that formula. Sorry, folks, I had to cut my comment off here because I had Francis chime in. As a boomer, Hogg's behavior doesn't work with me. And I say boomer lovingly, by the way, folks. I mean, I have parents that are boomers. I got in-laws that are boomers. They're fantastic people here. So I don't say that as a derogatory statement. Yeah, and then Wrong Think jumps in there too. So Nick Fuentes is the best example of Gen Z arrogance. Again, proving my point. Across all political persuasions, I just can't stand it anymore. Have some humility. Be able to say I don't know everything. I mean, I'm out here expounding things as if I'm speaking everything truthfully. I believe in what I say. I think it's correct here. But if you listen to the other podcasts, Jason and I bounce ideas off one another. We're listening to each other here. I'm laughing about it. Has David Hogg ever smiled before? Has he ever laughed before? Like, quit taking yourself so seriously. Yeah, Fuentes as well. Same thing. Again, Fuentes, Hogg, you got these two radical dudes out there just screaming all day. Never happy, never smiling, never admitting they've been wrong about something. But yes, anyone older than like 20, I don't even know where Gen Z goes up to. Is it 30 now? You can be Gen Z and a little bit older now. Yeah, that behavior just doesn't fly. Like as soon as someone acts that way, I'm done with you. I'm not talking about that. But going back to David Hogg here, he thinks he has the winning ticket. And again, it's not because he's looking at election results or polls, which I don't really believe necessarily, although the Kamala internal polls always had Trump winning. So you can believe their polls, not the public polls, not the ones they release to you, not the Ann Seltzer Iowa polls that says Kamala Harris is going to take Iowa by 3. But the Democrat internal polls, when they're like, holy cow, we got to get rid of Biden fast because he's going to lose in a landslide. Let's just install Kamala Harris. And then her internal polls didn't do much better. He has access to that information. He can see the exit data. He can see that Americans don't want to have an open border. He knows that most parents are not okay with their kids getting indoctrinated in these gay, race-based government school systems where if they have a white kid, they're told to hate themselves. And it's okay if Johnny is Susan and we should all celebrate her. Folks, this actually happened to me. I had forgotten this happened. When I was in high school in the early 2000s, we had one kid. His name was Will. One gay kid that I really knew about. He was just so open about it, so flamboyant. And I didn't hate him for it. I didn't really care. I just did not care. I played sports. I hung out with my friends. I did a good job in school. I was there just to get out. So I did not care. I still do not care. But in my class, and it was sociology, because of course it was, I took an extra class in the morning. They called it early bird because I was lied to at the time. They said, hey, if you take this extra class, something good's going to happen. And so you're like, well, I won't ask questions. I guess I'll just take this extra class at 6 in the morning as a high school kid. And even though I had a basketball game till 11 o'clock last night, sure, I'll go to this class. And our sociology teacher sat Will up on a stool in the front of the room. And for 1 hour, we all asked him questions about being gay. And he sat up there and he talked about being gay and what it was like. And as a high school kid, I'm pretty sure I was asleep at 6 in the morning. I was vaguely aware of this thing happening. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't pay attention, which is the only appropriate response. But as I think back on that, like, man, this has been happening for a long time. And I don't know if you're watching in the audience right now, if you've had kids experience this. Not recently, because I know it happens recently, but I'm talking almost 25 years ago, we had gay Will paraded around this class because we needed to be educated on the gay lifestyle. And here's Will's story, and isn't it fantastic? Every other kid in the class, screw you, you're not important. And doesn't that sum up the Democrat Party? You're just a regular person with real motivations, and you care about things. Doesn't matter because we've got Will, we've got our agenda, we got this, I'm sure it's a trans kids now, they would do that. If this sociology teacher from my hometown of Lakeville, Minnesota were still teaching, I have no doubt he would pick out the 100 trans kids in the school now maybe, pick out the trans kids, sit him up on a stool, and let us all learn how wonderful this person's life is. Like I said, Will, nice enough guy. I talked to him. I didn't care about him being gay, but I do care about the fact, now that I look back on this, that we celebrated him and elevated him above everybody else. That's what David Hogg wants to do. Screw you, regular Americans. I know that you rejected everything Kamala Harris ran on. I'm going to primary all the people that were basically part of the Harris regime, agenda, narrative. We're going to go even more tyrannical, more communist, more insane, and somehow that's going to work. If I spend enough money and get radical enough, that's going to overcome the challenges of Kamala Harris raising a ton of money and being radical, apparently. I can't even wrap my head around this philosophy. Like I said, you just have to accept it's a religion. Once you understand this is a religion, then it makes sense because there's no pumping the brakes. After they lost the election, right when I started the podcast here, I kept making the point, they're not going to learn from their mistakes because they can't learn from their mistakes. If I told you on Sunday, hey, do you think Jesus really rose from the dead? You'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm a Christian. Of course he rose from the dead. That's the whole point of Christianity. If Jesus doesn't rise from the dead, then there's no Christianity. Like, that's what's happening with Democrats. If you say, hey, did you know that Americans don't want an open border and they don't want to trans kids? That's their religion for them. They're like, well, of course we have to trans kids. Of course we have to open the border. Like, that's the whole point of being a Democrat. That's my religion. If I stop believing in open borders and trans and kids and foreign wars and restorative justice, then I'm not a Democrat anymore. And they're so afraid to admit that. Again, it's their religion. They're not going to learn from their mistakes. They're going to double and triple down. And David Hogg is doing exactly that. Yeah, I know. The inclusion argument, too. Don't get me started on that, Francis. Everything needs to be inclusive until it's not what they agree with. Anyway, so when I was in the government school system, I was an assistant principal at the elementary school for a couple of years, and that's when I called it quits. I started having kids. I was like, why am I raising these other kids? Their parents don't even love them. Why do I need to love them? I'm going to go home, work from home, spend time with my family, and then also get out of the government school system, by the way, which was a win-win. I got to spend more time with my kid and not just endure all this nonsense anymore. But we'd be doing these stupid meetings. Like I said, we had meetings every single day, and we talk about who can be more woke. Should we not suspend black kids? Should we allow black kids to punch their white teachers in the face and then make the teacher apologize for them getting punched in the face? And then it was election time. So I was there in 2020. COVID's happening. The election is happening. I promise you, every single educator was just losing their mind. They didn't know how to cope with COVID and Trump getting in this election cycle. And so we're sitting around, hey, did you go vote? Hey, this and that about Tim Walz and Donald Trump and blah, blah, blah. They will have just finished a conversation about inclusion. No, we can't suspend these black kids. No, we can't keep this black kid out of class for just punching his teacher. No, we can't. We have to trans kids. We have to tell these white kids they're bad. There's no other way around it. Inclusion. We need all of our kids to feel safe. We need to acknowledge the Dakota land that this building occupies and stole from these indigenous communities, these peaceful indigenous communities that, by the way, when you do the history of Minnesota, and all tribes for that matter, the Dakota fought against the Ojibwe, that fought against the whoever else. I think it was the Ojibwe that originated in like New York. They got pushed out in a land conflict for resources. So they end up coming into Minnesota area, and now they're fighting the Dakota and the Lakota. But yeah, they were all peaceful, and the only white people stole land. And you get done talking about inclusion, make the Indian kids, the black kids, the gay kids, the trans kids, make them all feel safe. Inclusion. And in like the very next sentence, someone would go on some rant about how one of their parents supported Donald Trump, and like, can you believe this? It's like, wait a second, we just talked about inclusion, but they don't mean any of it. They don't care about any of that. Okay, I got one more clip here, folks. This has been a very fast hour. I kid you not, I was going to do like 25, 30 minutes today. I was like, I got to get back in the hot seat here. I got to get back to this podcast here. We'll do a little David Hogg, James Carville, but turns out when you've been gone a couple of weeks, you have a lot of thoughts on your mind here. So I apologize for some of the rants, but I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate the comments. Francis, Fally, Wrong Think in the chat today. It's been awesome to see you guys in there. Like I said, we're not going to be live on Friday. Jason and I, we're going to do a pre-recorded podcast. We will be at a wedding in Tennessee for our business partner, Tariff Will, as he is now known in the group here, Tariff Will. But let's finish up here. We got Waters. Waters makes the analogy about how just wrong and stupid all of this is here as it relates to Hogg and Carville. Take a listen.
Greg, watching these two fights like watching women's boxing. They're both 130 pounds. The fighting's bad, and I don't care who wins. Clyburn, he himself is a problem. He's the one that gave us Joe Biden. He blackmailed Biden to have a DEI VP. Yep. He was part of that coup and then pushed Kamala instead of an open primary, and then they got wiped out. And he's blaming the media. Permission to make an analogy.
Please do.
This is like the Democrats are a chef who cooked disgusting food. The media is like the food critic that keeps on lying to everybody about how good the food is. Now, they don't have any more customers, and the critic has no more readers, and the chef, instead of changing his recipe, wants food critics fired and rehired with better food critics. It has nothing to do with the food critics. You cook disgusting dishes. You need to stop using influencers and celebrity appearances and flashy music. Just cook better food that everybody likes. Jessica, there's a saying, it's called all sizzle, no steak. Read about it.
It is something else to watch Democrats who run the entire media apparatus. There's a reason independent voices like mine exist or even exist, have a chance to exist, all the podcasts out there. There's a reason they exist because we know all of corporate media lies to us. Now, Waters on Fox, and few exceptions. You got Gutfeld, you had Waters, you had Tucker before. There are some voices of sanity out there that will cut through all that noise and nonsense. But the Democrat Party controls every narrative coming out there. We know this, by the way, because Elon Musk and Doge uncovered receipts worth tens of millions of dollars going to the New York Times, Politico, and you don't think that influenced how they covered it? Or you don't think, for example, again, I'll relate it to my experience in the government school system. When we interviewed people, we would ask very specific questions. I think I memorized one of the questions because I had asked it so much for these poor teachers that I think they probably believed it. But at the same time, I'm like, we're asking this question to be a teacher. How will you interact with students of historically marginalized communities? How will you show up every day for Black and brown students so that they so that they're seen and heard in your school, in your classroom? Something to that effect here. So we would hire people based on their ideology, not on how good they could teach, not on what they brought to the table necessarily with their craft or their skill or their creativity. We would hire people on one reason only, and that was, are you woke? Will you support indoctrination of kids into the Democrat agenda? So no doubt the media operates the same way. Look, you can have a seat at that table. You can have a camera turned on your face. You can have a little typewriter here and publish some stories. Just understand, though, you're only going to be able to write and talk about one thing and one thing only, and that is the Democrat narrative. That's the establishment narrative. And now Democrats are blaming the media, whom they have a monopoly on. Oh, we're just blaming media coverage for the disaster. It's the media's fault Kamala Harris wasn't favored so well, even though she went from 0% favorability to like 100%. She's the new messiah in the Democrat Party overnight. But yeah, let's blame the media. Wild stuff. And I think they believe it. I think they believe their own lies. And I go back and forth. Do they believe their lies or not? Do they know they're lying and they're just going to say it anyways for votes? Sometimes yes, but I think they actually are blaming the media. If only we had better coverage. If only we had 100% and not 99% of the media narrative coverage, maybe then we could win elections here. Yeah, and as Fally writes, going back to my school stories, kids are kids, period, treat them the same. Yes, and it turns out you can hold kids to high standards. Hey, we don't fight in this school. Hey, we're going to learn how to read by the end of kindergarten. You can hold all kids to that standard there. Now, I will say this. I am a little bit jaded on the school system as well. I taught middle school prior to becoming an elementary administrator here. I taught middle school for 5 years. I love middle school. I love those kids. They were all knuckleheads. They gave me a headache every single day. But kids are kids. I mean, it's not their fault they get raised in certain circumstances. I mean, you get to a certain age and you understand right from wrong, and then you do have to be accountable for your actions. But ultimately, like, kids did not ask to be born into certain families. And so you treat them as kids. They're good-natured for the most part. And then I was always like, man, middle school, they have a lot of holes in their understanding of life here. I wonder what happens at the younger ages. And I wasn't blaming like elementary teachers. So you get down to the elementary level and you get into a kindergarten classroom. And I kid you not, we had kids that were raised in car seats. They didn't know how to speak. They didn't know how to smile. They didn't know how to talk. And then you just see every deficiency going on there. Like, I don't like books. And when you see that kids from the ages of 0 and 5 are raised on screens or neglect or highly processed foods, you start to realize that no amount of schooling will ever play catch up for them. Once they hit kindergarten, it's game over. It starts from the moment they are born to the moment they hit kindergarten. If nothing good happened in those first 5 years, I am sorry to say that nothing good is really going to happen for the majority of them. There's always exceptions to the rule. You'll find one kid that connects with one teacher, and I understand that these miracles happen, but it's a lie that teachers have to tell themselves of like, I'm making a difference. Like, yes, in these suburbs, kids might be on the right path, although the same thing applies there. You see all these rich kids get neglected by their parents, raised on screens, get handed everything. They still eat the same junk food. Like, it's not working out for them either. But certainly in the inner city where I worked, nothing good was happening to these kids for the most part. And it is a lie to tell ourselves, if only we spend more money on the school system, we will make up for the 5 most important years of a child's life. Yeah, I have the 5, 6, and 7 years. They're learning how to be humans. Yeah, and that's our job to teach them how to be humans. But unfortunately, so many parents out there do not do that. And again, we can nudge kids in the right direction. And it works for some kids. I'm not making this as an all or nothing, a binary choice. But I am saying, by and large, sorry, folks, if 0 to 5 didn't happen, nothing after 5 is going to change in the realm of that. And yeah, Fally, you did say that before you were a lunch lady here. Yeah, by the way, I loved the cafeteria crew where I worked at the elementary school and the middle school. I think the cafeteria crew is just awesome. We had fresh cooked meals every day in our cafeteria at the elementary school here. And the kids could be knuckleheads all day long. And oftentimes, maybe this was your experience, Valley. I don't know what kind of school system you worked in. Like the lunch ladies were all like these kids' persons. They were all their people. Like no matter what happened throughout the day, they would get in the lunch line and get a big hug from their grandma lunch lady. And it was so awesome to see. So no, it's a very valuable role here. And again, I am not saying that it doesn't work for everybody, but by and large, if we're doing this pipeline system of just year 5, year 6, go sit in a kindergarten classroom, you can teach kids things that you can never play catch up. They got to get the 0 to 5 year. That's partly why I left the school system and stayed at home, because I said, I can't miss these critical years here. I got to be in front of the kids every day. I don't want someone else teaching my kids. I want to teach my kids. And I wish we had the ability to make that happen again. All right, that was kind of a random tangent to end the show here. But folks, we are at the hour. That was our last video, by the way. Waters talking about his restaurant analogy. And again, astounding to see Democrat politicians, strategists blame the media. If only we had better coverage. As if they could have any more glowing coverage here. I should have brought in the clip. You can go to theamericantribune.com today. We just put this video and article up. Jasmine Crockett goes on. Her name is Fang. I don't know who she is. She's over on MSNBC. But they're just crying it out together because it's Fang's last show and they're just best friends. It was like a high school drama here. Hey, bestie, I got a camera. Let's cry and laugh together at the same time. It's like, that's what the media is. You're telling me we need more of that? I mean, you can't get any worse than that stuff right there. But that's what they believe. David Hogg believes we just need to spend more and be more woke. If only we had better media coverage. These people are immune to logic and truth and morality and goodness. Wrong Think chiming in here as I wrap up the show. I'm going to miss you guys on Friday, but you couldn't pick a better reason to postpone the show. Will's posts and AT interviews are really great. I wish him the best. Yeah, Will is fantastic. I think Will drives the ship on this crew. The rest of us are just along for the ride here. Will is super smart. He's going places. You will see him on Fox one day. You'll see him on other networks for sure. Will is doing some good stuff here. So very excited for him. Again, we're going to be at a wedding in Tennessee for Will on Friday and Saturday. So pre-recorded show. But good reasons. And then Jason and I will be back next Friday. Folks, I'll be back next Thursday. Again, I get to be at home for a little bit. I've been in Florida, Arizona, going to be in Tennessee. So it's been a lot of travel in the month of April, which if you know the Minnesota area, it is either snowing or raining or 70 degrees one day and 30 the next day. So I haven't missed a lot of Minnesota weather here. And again, I'm in Minnesota, so we always have to talk about the weather. But I appreciate you tuning in today. Thanks for coming along for the ride with me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting. Wrong Think, Fally, Francis in the chat today. Thanks for all the comments there. Always spot on. I think our Rumble audience, our American Tribune Rumble family, some of the best viewers out there. So I appreciate you guys joining me for my first show back in a while. I think I've been gone for 2 weeks. But with that being said, I'm going to sign off here. Folks, have a great rest of your Tuesday. I'll see you back again on Thursday. Pre-recorded show up on Friday for the American Tribune podcast. And then Jason and I are back next Friday. I am back next Thursday. Have a great rest of your day.
Starting on day one, we'll implement a rapid series of bold reforms to restore our nation to full prosperity. We're going to go full prosperity and to build the greatest economy the world has ever seen, just as we had just a short time ago. We will make America powerful again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America healthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America